Welcome, sixth graders, to Lesson 5, Day 4. So, first off, make sure your book's on page 44 and make sure you have a calculator in case you need it. If you don't have those things, pause the video and go get them. All right, second, here's what we're going to do today. We are going to practice solving percent problems. Some of these you're going to find the percent of the number. In other words, you're going to find the part. Some of these you're going to be given the part and you're going to have to find the whole amount, which is solved a little bit differently. Now, as you do these, make sure you follow my directions. So if I say pause the video to do a problem, make sure you do that, and then restart it to see if you are correct. If you're not sure, you give it your best shot, and then if you're wrong, so what? You learn from it when you watch the video. You have time to make your corrections. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First thing, we are going to solve the example problem together, and you don't have to write anything here unless you want to take notes, okay? Now, I just got rid of all the stuff from the book, so yeah, it's in your book, but I'd rather you just pay attention here and learn from it. So here's what the problem says. It says, at Sydney School, 300 of the 500 girls and 450 of the 600 boys attend the spring carnival. Which group had the greater attendance? Now, we're going to go through this, and what I'm going to do is I am going to find the percentage of girls who attended and the percentage of boys who attended. So let's start with the girls. So I'll label that right here. So the girls, we have 300 of the 500 girls attended. And we need to figure out basically how many that is out of 100, because remember, percent means out of 100. So to solve this one, I noticed that 500 divided by 5 is 100. So then I'm going to do 300 divided by 5, and I get 60. So what that means is 60% of the girls attended the spring carnival. Now for the boys, I'm going to do the same thing. So for the boys, 450 out of 600 attended the spring carnival. And I need to figure out how many that is out of 100. Now to do that, I know 600 divided by 6 gets me 100. And if I do 450 divided by 6, I get 75. So that means that 75% of the boys attended the spring carnival. Now, the answer, which group had the greater attendance? We would just say the boys, because 75% is greater than 60%. So what I just did is I set up equivalent ratios and I figured out the percent, because all you have to do is figure out the ratio out of 100 to get the percent. Now we are going to talk about the pair share here, so let's read this question. It says, why can't you say 450 is greater than 300 so the boys have better attendance? So what they're saying is, all right, there were more boys than girls who attended, so why not just say the boys had the greater attendance? Well, the reason you can't is because you need to know the total number of boys or girls that were there. Because the 450 sounds like a lot, but it's out of 600 boys. The 300 might sound like less, but it's out of only 500 girls. So because the whole number is different, you need to figure out the percent to compare who had the greater attendance. All right, that's the point of percent. Now, that is one example of a problem you're going to be doing today. So what we're going to do on page 44 and 45 is we're going to have you work on these problems on your own, and then I'm going to go over them in the video. So your first job is you are going to do 16 and only 16. You're going to show your work in this space and write your solution on the line. Now, before you read it and start it, or if after you read it, I want you to make sure you read the hint that this guy over here has given you, because it's going to give you a strategy. All right, so do number 16. As soon as you're done, restart the video to see if you're right. Go. All right, so let's see how you did. Now, notice this guy here says, how can you use an equivalent ratios table to help you solve the problem? Well, the hint is, I'm going to do an equivalent ratios table to help me solve the problem. So here's what it says. Caesar turned in his third research report. His teacher said that Caesar had completed 20% of the reports for the school year. And the question says, how many research reports will he do during the school year? So in other words, we need to figure out the total. We need to find the whole. We know the part. We know he did 3 research reports, which is part. And we know that those 3 reports are 20% of the whole. So I'm going to set up an equivalent ratios table here. Remember, you could add more columns if you need them. So for the top, I'm going to do the research reports. So I'll just write reports. And the bottom is going to be percents. Now, remember, I know this is going to be 100%. And I also know I need to figure out the whole. So I need to figure out where that red question mark is. So first thing, it said he did 3 research reports, right? So I'm just going to put 3 somewhere. It doesn't matter which one you put on top. And we know those 3 research reports are 20%. Okay, so now, different things I could do. Well, first thing, I noticed that 20 can multiply by 5 to get 100. So all I have to do is 3 times 5, and I'll get my answer, which is 15. So that means, how many research reports will he do during the school year? Caesar will do 15 reports. Okay. All right, so that's it for that one. So let's check out this pair share. This says, suppose you think of 20% as 20 over 100, or 1/5. How can you solve the problem using 1/5 instead of 20? So let me show you kind of a cool way that you could do that. And I'm going to just do a percentage bar here. And I'm going to split it into fifths. Now remember, this would be 0/5, this would be 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and 5/5. And also remember, 5/5 is the same as 100%. So you need to figure out how many total reports he has. Now he did 20%, which is 3, right? So 1/5 is 3. So check this out. I think this is pretty cool. So if 0/5 is 0 reports, 1/5 is 3. I'm just going to count by 3s. 6, 9, 12, 15. So that means all of the reports, all 100%, would be 15 reports. So just a different way you could have solved that problem. All right, let's go on to the next page. Remember, if you need to, you could pause the video at any time. If you got one wrong, no big deal. Just learn from it and make sure you make your corrections. Okay, let's go to page 45. So now, in this one, we're going to read it because we're going to set you up here. So it says, Nia answered 80% of the 40 questions on a test correctly. So 80% of the 40 questions are correct. How many correct answers did she have? Now, I want to talk about why this one is different from the last one. Because in the last one, I'm going to go back to it here, you had to figure out the whole. How many research reports will he do during the school year? You were given the part. You were told he only did part of them so far. He did 3, right? So in that one, you had to figure out the whole. In this one, you are given the whole. It says Nia answered 80% of the 40 questions. So that 40 questions is the whole. You have to figure out the part. How many correct answers did she have? Now, different things you could do. You can write 80% of the 40 questions as a math problem. I'm not going to give you too many hints yet. We did this a couple lessons ago. Or you can do a ratio table. But just remember, in this one, the 80% and the 40 questions, the 40 questions is the whole. Okay, so make sure that 40 questions goes with the 100% is. All right, so I want you to try 17. You don't have to do it both of these ways. I'm going to do it both of these ways when I go over them. But I do want you to figure out what 80% of the 40 questions is. All right, pause the video. Do number 17. Go. Okay, so let's see how you did. So 80% of 40. So here's the one way. If you know you have to figure out the part, you could just do 80% as 80 over 100. Of means times. And 40 we write as 40 over 1. Now, to solve, I multiply 80 times 40, which is 3,200, and 100 times 1, which is 100. Now remember, to divide by 100, you just get rid of 2 zeros. So I'm going to write this down here. So if I do 3,200 divided by 100, that's the same as getting rid of 2 zeros, because 100 has 2 zeros, right? So my answer is going to be 32. So 80% of 40 questions is 32 questions. So if you had 32 questions as your answer, however you did it, give yourself a C. But now, let me just show you how you can use a ratio table for this one. So, over here, let me get it set up. So on top, I'm going to have questions. So I'll just put a QU for questions. On bottom, I'm going to have the percent. And I know that 100% is 40 questions, because it says 80% of the 40 questions, right? So I have to figure out what 80% is. So let's say I just write down 80% here. Okay, well, going from 40 to, or 100 to 80 isn't quite so easy, but I can find an equivalent ratio. So maybe I know if I divide 40 and 100 by 10. So divide by 10, divide by 10, I can get 4 out of 10. So 4 out of 10 is equivalent to 40 out of 100. And now I can go 10 times 8 is 80. I could do 4 times 8 to get 32. So 32 questions is 80%. So either way, you should have 32 questions as your answer. Now, in this question, in this pair share, it says, did you use a fraction or a decimal to solve this problem? Why? So they are just asking about if you did it this way, if you multiplied. Notice that, let me switch over to pink here. Okay, notice that when I did it, I used fractions. And the reason I did is because I think it's kind of easier math to get it. But you could have done 80% as 80 hundredths as a decimal times 40. Some people like multiplying decimals better. So that's what they're asking. Did you do decimals? Did you do fractions? Why would you do it? So it's up to you. All right, now, in number 18, this is the last one we're going to do here. It says, Andrea, I don't know. Let's say Andrea. Andrea's grandfather offered to give, oh, it can't be Andrea, that's a girl's name. Andrew's grandfather offered to give him a gift of 50% of the amount of money he saved in 1 year. So his grandfather's going to give him 50% of the amount of money he saved in 1 year. So Andrew saved $120. So remember, his grandfather's going to give him 50% of that. How much did his grandfather give him as a gift? So your job, is to, well, first I would read this dude's hint. See if that helps you out. And your job is to show your work in the space below the problem and answer A, B, C, D. Don't do this down here yet. We'll be doing that in a little bit. Okay, pause the video, do number 18 on your own. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. So, first off, it says, Andrew's grandfather offered to give him a gift of 50%, so of the amount he saved. So think about it. He's going to give him 50% of the amount he saved. In other words, 50% of $120. Now in this one, if you know to set this up as a multiplication problem, you can write it two ways. 50% is 50 over 100 times 120 over 1. But maybe you know that 50% is half. Maybe you know to just find half of 120. You'll get the same thing. So let me do the one in red first. If you do that one, you would do 50 times 120. Remember, I'm doing 5 times 12 is 60. But then I'm going to add the 2 zeros. So I get 6,000. And 100 times 1 is 100. And then I would do 6,000 divided by 100. And also remember that means just get rid of the 2 zeros. And I get my answer of 60. So the answer is B. Now I'm going to go to the one over here. Let's say you knew 50% was half. Well, what's half of 120? To find half of any number, can't you just divide it by 2? So half of 120 is 60. So you still get B. All right, so if you had B for that, however you came up with it, awesome. Give yourself a C. But now, here's the last thing you're going to do. First off, you are going to answer this part that I'm circling. It says, Mitch chose D as the correct answer. How did he get that answer? So I want you to think for a little bit and write, you're going to pause it in a little bit and write, how do you think Mitch got 180? Now, I think I know how he got it, but you'll write how you think. Now, I'm going to split these lines in half because that answer is going to be on the left. But then you're going to do your pair share. How can you show that your answer is 50% of 120? And you're going to write that on the right side. Now, remember, you can think when you're answering that pair share, any way you can think to show that your answer is 50% of 120, anything you can think of, you're going to be right. You don't have to change anything. All right, so you have 2 questions to answer, the one about Mitch here and the pair share on the right. Pause the video, write both of those answers, and restart it when you're done. Go. All right, so let's see what you came up with. So I want to talk about how I think Mitch got D as an answer. So remember how the answer was $60. That $60 was half of 120. I think, this is what I think. I think Mitch figured out the $60 is the half of 120. But I think Mitch added that to the $120 he already saved. Remember, he saved 120 and his grandfather gave him 60. And I think that's how he got 180. That's my guess. So I'm going to just write that. Remember, if you have something different, you think something different, don't change it. You're allowed to think what you want here. So I'm going to say, I think Mitch added the $60 from his grandfather with the $120 he saved. Okay, that's just what I'm thinking. I might be wrong. Doesn't matter, right? Now, on the right side, the pair share. How can you show that your answer is 50% of 120? So, I mean, you could draw a picture, you could make a table, but here is how I know. I'm going to say, I know 60 is 50% of 120 because 120 divided by 2 equals 60. Because think about it, 50% is half. So to find half of something, you divide it by 2. So 120 divided by 2 is 60. That's my answer. That is how I know 60 is 50% of 120. So you can have something totally different, but that's my answer. All right. So remember, you can go back and watch any part of this if you need to see something again. If you had mistakes, please correct them. And as always, thanks for watching.